The warning unheeded. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the gentle murmur of 300 species in discussion. Translators worked overtime as bioluminescent Narathi delegates flashed information patterns to silicon-based Trellex observers. Methane-breathing Gorvan representatives floated in their specialized environmental bubbles beside the towering arthropoid Bexcar diplomats. And then there were the humans. In the 5 decades since Earth had joined the interstellar community, the bipedal mammals had been something of a curiosity. They came from a high-gravity death world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Their technological advancements were respectable, but hardly revolutionary by galactic standards. Their military presence was minimal, a handful of exploration vessels with defensive capabilities that made the elder race's war ministers chuckle behind closed doors. Yet they had survived and thrived in a spiral arm controlled by empires millions of years older than their recorded history. Ambassador Ilara Rise approached the central podium for what the other delegates assumed would be her standard address. They had heard it many times before. Some delegates even placed discreet wagers on whether she would use the exact same phrasing. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, she began, her voice steady and clear. The United Earth Confederation once again extends its gratitude for inclusion in this esteemed body. We continue to offer our collaboration in scientific endeavors, cultural exchange, and peaceful trade. Several Zephyrian delegates, with their 4 iridescent eyes and scaled crests, exchanged knowing glances. Their empire spanned 3 spiral arms and dated back 15,000 years. To them, humans were barely more than clever primates. Ilara paused, and the chamber sensed the familiar refrain approaching. And we respectfully remind the Council of our standing request. Please, don't make us mad. Supreme Overlord Khazar of the Zephyrian Empire couldn't contain his multi-toned laugh, all 4 of his vocal sacs vibrating in derision. The sound rippled through the chamber like a wave, and soon other delegates joined in the mockery, though many of the elder species remained tellingly silent. Ambassador Reyes, Khazar's voice boomed through his translator. We have endured this peculiar human warning for 15 cycles now. Your species occupies 17 worlds, with a total military fleet numbering fewer than 200 vessels. The Zephyrian Empire alone maintains over 20,000 warships. What exactly should we fear if we make you mad? Ilara's expression didn't change. We sincerely hope you never have to find out, Supreme Overlord. The laughter grew louder, but Ambassador Tellurian of the ancient Etheric Collective leaned forward, her crystalline form catching the light. Perhaps we should consider that a species surviving on a Class 13 death world might have qualities we do not fully comprehend. Khazar waved a dismissive limb. The humans have their qualities, certainly. Their tenacity is admirable. Their art is occasionally interesting, but their diplomatic posturing has grown tiresome. 3 weeks later, the Zephyrian 4th Conquest Fleet moved into position around Proxima Haven, the outermost human colony. 47 dreadnoughts against a settlement protected by 3 orbital platforms and a single patrol cruiser. The colony surrendered within hours. When news reached Earth, the United Earth Confederation Parliament convened an emergency session. The Zephyrian ambassador attended, expecting the typical diplomatic protests. Demands for withdrawal, threats of sanctions, perhaps even a tearful plea for mercy. Instead, President Sanjay Mehta asked only one question: why did you make us mad? What followed would be remembered throughout the galaxy as the Week of Silence. For 7 standard days, human ships everywhere quietly returned to port. Human ambassadors withdrew from their postings without explanation. Human communications went dark. Human trade ceased. The Zephyrians celebrated their victory. The rest of the galactic community watched nervously. On the 8th day, a single human vessel, the UEC Prometheus, appeared in orbit around the Zephyrian throne world of Khazaria. Just one ship, alone and seemingly unarmed, it broadcast a single message on all frequencies across the Empire. You made us mad. Then it left. The Zephyrians laughed. One ship, Was this humanity's response? 3 days later, Zephyrian astronomers noticed something peculiar about their sun. Subtle changes in its spectral signature indicated disturbances at the stellar core. Impossible, they thought. No known technology could affect a star's internal dynamics. Ambassador Reyes returned to the Galactic Council. "We have initiated Protocol Leviathan," she announced calmly. "The Zephyrian home star will undergo accelerated fusion in approximately 30 days, reaching supernova stage. We have provided evacuation coordinates for civilian vessels only. Military ships will be neutralized on site." Pandemonium erupted. Elder species representatives shouted that stellar manipulation violated every treaty in galactic history. The Zephyrian delegation threatened total war. Ilara simply raised her hand for silence. "For 5 decades, we have maintained minimal military presence because we didn't want to frighten you," she explained. "Our ships don't carry weapons because our ships are weapons. What you call faster-than-light drives is just one application of our fundamental understanding of space-time manipulation." She displayed a hologram of a small device no larger than her palm. "This is a stellar exciter. The Prometheus deployed thousands into your sun. They create cascading fusion reactions that cannot be stopped once initiated." The council fell silent as understanding dawned. "We don't build warships because we don't need them," Rice continued. "We can unmake stars. We can fold space. The reason we've been saying 'don't make us mad' is because we genuinely don't want to use these capabilities. We hoped coexistence was possible without revealing the full extent of our technology." The Etheri ambassador's crystalline form vibrated with a frequency that translated as profound concern. "But you are so young. How could your species possibly master stellar engineering before achieving unified planetary government? The technological progression makes no sense." Ilara's expression darkened. "We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We survived by learning to control forces that should be uncontrollable. On Earth, we call it necessity is the mother of invention. When your survival depends on mastering the impossible, you either master it or you die." Within 2 weeks, the Zephyrian Empire surrendered unconditionally. Their population began a massive exodus from their homeworld, one that humanity actively assisted despite the recent hostilities. When the Zephyrian sun flared exactly as predicted, brightening to near supernova state before human intervention stabilized it just short of destruction, the message was clear to all. Humans hadn't been issuing threats all these years. They had been pleading for peace. The final evacuation ships departed Khazaria just as the star's outer layers began to peel away, a controlled stellar event that would render the system uninhabitable but wouldn't threaten neighboring star systems. Supreme Overlord Khazar, watching from the command deck of a refugee vessel, finally understood. Humans weren't weak. They were terrified of their own power. The power revealed. In the aftermath of what became known as the Zephyrian Lesson, humanity's place in the galaxy changed forever. The Galactic Council chamber, once filled with dismissive murmurs when human representatives spoke, now fell into immediate silence whenever Ambassador Ilara Rice approached the podium. "We regret the necessity of our demonstration," she told the assembled delegates one standard month after the controlled stellar event. "But we believe that a single star's partial destabilization would prevent the need for broader conflict." The Narathi Prime Executor's bioluminescent patterns flashed with intense patterns that even the best translators struggled to interpret. "Roughly translated," he asked, "how many stars could you have destroyed?" Ilara hesitated before answering. "All of them." The silence that followed was profound. At humanity's invitation, a delegation of the galaxy's foremost scientists was permitted to visit Earth's orbital research station Archimedes. What they discovered there would rewrite the understanding of technological progression throughout known space. Dr. Mira Chen, Earth's leading theoretical physicist, guided the alien delegation through laboratories that seemed almost primitive by galactic standards, until she began to explain their work. "We discovered early in our atomic age that our models of physics were incomplete. She explained as holographic simulations danced around them. Most species develop spaceflight before fully understanding quantum gravity. We couldn't. Earth's gravity well is too deep, its atmosphere too thick. Getting to orbit was exponentially more difficult for us than for most spacefaring races. The Trelec scientist San Rev, whose silicon-based consciousness operated inside a mobile mechanical body, processed this information. You needed more efficient energy systems to achieve orbit. Precisely, Dr. Chen confirmed. We couldn't brute force our way to the stars like the Zephyrians did with their fusion drives. We had to understand the fundamental fabric of reality first. She brought up a new simulation, a complex mathematical model that made even the ancient ethery scientists tilt their crystalline forms in confusion. This is what we call the Wong-Katayeve unified field theory. It demonstrates that gravity, electromagnetism, and the nuclear forces are all manifestations of a single underlying field. Once we understood this, manipulating space-time became relatively straightforward. The Gorvin physicist's methane bubble vibrated with incredulity. This mathematics suggests you can effectively rewrite local reality. Dr. Chen's smile was sad. Yes, and that terrifies us. Meanwhile, the Zephyrian refugees had been resettled across a dozen worlds, with humanity providing substantial aid despite the recent conflict. Supreme Overlord Khazar, now bearing the much humbler title of representative, requested a private audience with President Meta on Earth. The human homeworld shocked him. He had expected a militarized planet bristling with defenses. Instead, he found sprawling cities nestled inside restored natural ecosystems, with minimal visible security. The presidential residence was a modest building constructed of actual organic wood, a luxury unheard of in most of the galaxy. Your defenses are invisible, Khazar asked as they walked through a garden of flowering plants. President Meta laughed. We have no planetary defenses. That's impossible. After what your people demonstrated. We demonstrated what we could do if threatened, Meta interrupted gently. Not what we wanted to do. Earth remains undefended because any species capable of threatening us would already understand that harming our homeworld would be the last action they ever took. Khazar's 4 eyes blinked in uncomfortable succession. You would destroy everything in retaliation. No, Meta said firmly. But we could. And that possibility keeps us humble. That's what you never understood, Representative Khazar. We weren't warning the galaxy about our power. We were warning you about the terrible responsibility that comes with it. As the former Zephyrian leader absorbed this, President Meta continued. Our history is filled with technologies developed for one purpose but weaponized for another. Atomics, biologicals, information systems. Each time we advanced, we nearly destroyed ourselves. When we finally understood how to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe, we realized we had created the ultimate double-edged sword. But you use this technology for faster-than-light travel, Khazar observed. Yes, the same principles that allow us to excite stellar matter also let us fold space for transportation. The same understanding that could unmake stars lets us terraform barren worlds. We choose to build rather than destroy. But we need the rest of the galaxy to respect that we could choose otherwise. As details of human technology became more widely known, many species initially reacted with fear. The Vexcar Dominion withdrew their representatives entirely. The Gorvin hegemony began constructing deep underground shelters on all their colonies. But the elder species, those who had seen civilizations rise and fall over millions of years, responded differently. The Etheric Collective sent a delegation to Earth with an unprecedented proposal. They would share their ancient knowledge of consciousness transfer, technology they had withheld from the younger races for millennia, in exchange for humanity's promise never to use stellar excitation as a weapon again. We recognize now what we should have seen from the beginning, Ambassador Tellurian told the United Earth Parliament. You are not a young species playing at diplomacy. You are children who found a supernova cannon in your sandbox and have been desperately trying to warn everyone not to make you pull the trigger. 3 standard years after the Zephyrian lesson, the Galactic Council was reorganized. The dominance of ancient empires gave way to a more equitable system, where technological capability was balanced against ethical responsibility. Humanity, despite their relatively small interstellar footprint, was granted a permanent seat on the newly formed High Council. At the inauguration ceremony, Ambassador Rice addressed the assembled representatives one final time before retiring from her diplomatic role. "When we first ventured into the stars, we feared what we might find," she said. "Would we discover predatory empires, resource-hungry collectives, genocidal machines? We prepared for the worst, developing technologies that no species should possess." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, or sensory organs, of each delegation. "Instead, we found a community, flawed, like us, sometimes petty, sometimes noble. We discovered that the true challenge of the galaxy isn't survival, but coexistence. Not conquest, but collaboration." Her voice grew softer, but the chamber's perfect acoustics carried her words to every corner. "We never wanted to unmake stars or fold space or reshape planets. We just wanted to explore, to learn, to grow. And now, finally, we can do so without fear, because you understand what we've been trying to say all along." She smiled, and across the chamber, delegates of 300 species found themselves returning the gesture in their own unique ways. "Please don't make us mad. Not because we're dangerous, though we are, but because we'd rather be your friends." As she stepped away from the podium, the chamber erupted in approval. The Narathi lights pulsed in complex patterns of respect. The Gorvan bubbles vibrated with harmonics of agreement. Even the Zephyrian representatives, now led by a chastened Khazar, joined in the universal acknowledgement. The galaxy had finally heard what humanity had been saying all along. They weren't threatening war. They were offering peace. And the universe, at long last, listened.